I really believed this was the day I was going to die.
Welcome to the In-Between. I'm Carol Ann, and today we bring you something truly special. The survivor of this encounter, a personal friend of this channel, told me he would be honored to have me tell his story. But truly, the honor is all mine. So, buckle up, my friends, and get ready for the absolutely harrowing DOGMAN experience of Matt Emch.
Walk like an Egyptian.
1987. A world of difference away.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
From the world of today. For those of us who were in our teens in the 80s, most of us remember those days of relative freedom pretty fondly. Life was pretty easy and only getting better. Teenage girls spent most of their time learning how to put on makeup, hanging out at the mall, and swooning over Duran Duran. But if you were a boy with a bike at the beginning of summer, the world was your oyster. Matt and his friends, who were 14 at the time, had bikes. They would ride all around their hometown of Youngstown, Ohio, back in the days when the only rule most kids their age had was to be home by dark. But Matt and his friends had a favorite place that they liked to go. Partly because it was close to where one of their friends lived. Still took them a half an hour to run the gauntlet of highways and fences and gravel piles to get there, but mostly because it was a place where they could just hang out without anyone knowing where they were. Their own private hideout. Too bad this hideout happened to be inside one of the crumbling old buildings of the Jeanette blast furnaces of the Briar Hill Steel Company. The steel company and blast furnaces shut down in 1974, so after being abandoned for over a decade, nature had taken its toll on this place. Concrete floors were cracked and chipping, and the iron staircases were rusted and falling apart, and in some cases, only half there. Not to mention the occasional piece of falling concrete. There was no end to the list of ways these boys could get hurt by playing in this building. And that's only the danger of the building itself. That doesn't include the danger of the area the building is in. Packs of wild dogs roamed the area. These are not the friendly pups that need rescuing. These were the kind that would rather take your hand than the treat you had in it. Not to mention the crime. Youngstown, Ohio, in general, was known as Murder Town, USA, and that particular area was known for its mafia body dumps, occasional gang activity, and the occasional dead homeless person, either murdered or attacked by the wild dogs. But they couldn't give this place up. It was perfect. The first floor was a big open space that was kind of like an atrium that was open to all the floors above. Standing in the middle, you could look up and see each of the 3 floors above you, each with a half wall that allowed you to look back down to the first floor. I'm calling it an atrium, but it's not like it was this beautiful garden area. It was empty, just concrete everywhere with a massive 4 to 5 foot wide pillar at each corner to hold everything up. To keep out prying eyes, either canine or human, they had used these 3 to 4 foot tall metal Spartan shield looking pieces of metal that just happened to be laying everywhere and stacked them up in 2 rows to build a double layer steel wall about 7 to 8 feet tall around the atrium's edges with a small gap that made kind of a doorway out onto this concrete apron. And even then, there's still another 8 feet of open air above that. And maybe this place wasn't much to look at, but it was their own private corner of the world, their bro HQ. One June evening, Matt and 3 other boys out of the group of friends who, for the sake of this story, we're going to call Pete, Doug, and Terry, are hanging out in front of a fire on the first floor. And they lit fires there all the time. The whole place is just open concrete, so it's not like anything's going to catch fire. There's plenty of pallets and other debris around to burn, and the Spartan shield walls were high enough so no one outside could see the flames. It gets to be around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, full dark outside, and the boys have hit that point around the campfire where everyone has told all the stories that they have to tell and are now just kind of staring into the flames when they hear the wild dog pack coming. The sound puts them on alert. They weren't really worried about the dogs. All of the actual staircases that led into the building had disintegrated to the point where the boys had to jump up and kind of crawl their way in. So the dogs can't get in, but the boys are curious. So they all get up and step through that gap in the shield wall and out onto this concrete apron that kind of sticks out from the side of the building. Between the moonlight from above and the firelight from their big bonfire spilling out over their shield wall, they can make out the edges of this 15 to 20 foot high pile of coke in front of them. Now, coke is a distilled coal that's used for fuel in the steelmaking process, and there are these huge piles of it as far as the eye can see in either direction. So the boys are standing out on this concrete outcropping when they see the dogs, maybe 6 or 7 of them, come in front of the building, make a left, paying no attention to the boys, which is pretty unusual, cross over the railroad tracks that run next to the building and run up and over the big coke pile that is right in front of the boys. Immediately, they can hear the sounds of a pretty good dogfight starting. But it's happening on the far side of the coke pile, so they can't see it. They can hear some pretty vicious barking and growling going on, but they just assume it's a Jets versus Sharks of the dog pack world kind of a turf war going on. Until they hear the growl. It's a very loud and very deep half growl, half roar that rises through the air on the other side of the pile, followed by yelps and cries of pain from the dogs. And if that wasn't enough to get their attention, the 2 dogs that come flying over the top of the pile sure do. And not flying like they were moving fast, flying like something has picked them up and tossed them feet to the sky flying. The first one to come over lands in the coke, gets up, and limps away, obviously not interested in going back for a second try. The second one to come over hits the coke with a thud, sending coke bits everywhere. This one has not fared as well as the first one, with a deep, bleeding gash on its side. A couple more come sailing over the top, followed by the rest of the pack on foot. They all form up again, and as a pack, get the hell out of Dodge. As the boys stand there watching them leave and wondering what exactly could do this to the dogs, Terry says, "Guys, what is that?" Everyone follows Terry's finger to the pile, where they see, crawling to the top of the pile on all 4s, is the biggest animal Matt has ever seen. It is a gigantic wolf-looking creature that is so big, Matt thinks, it's gotta be fake. This thing is easily as big or bigger than a polar bear, which, standing on all 4s, is about 5 feet at its shoulder, which is as tall as I am. But it's not a bear. It's the opposite of a bear. It's not the lumbering mass of a polar bear. This thing is long and sleek and muscular. It climbs to the top of the pile and watches the pack of dogs as they run away. And like the winner of any good dog fight, it then lifts its leg and starts marking its territory. And the boys, who are already freaked out, to say the least, at the sheer size of this thing, watch in panicked fascination as the stream of urine hits the coke pile with such force that coke bits go flying. They can hear the sound of it hitting the rock. Matt realizes that whatever this thing is, it is bigger and stronger than anything they could have ever imagined. And he can tell that this thing is not just an animal, but it's also not human. It is something else. And Matt says seeing this thing is the first time he can remember feeling actual raw fear, because he knows right now its mind is still on the dogs, but at some point it's going to see them or smell them or hear them or something, and at that point its attention is going to turn to them. As if reading Matt's mind, Terry starts to stumble backwards, hitting the makeshift shield wall, causing one of the heavy shields to scrape across the concrete. Matt watches his biggest fear materialize in a split second when the beast snaps its head in their direction. The boys freeze as its eyes instantly zero in on them with a fleeting look of surprise that quickly turns to what Matt perceives is a look of anger that they're there. Immediately, the boys see its amber-colored eyes glowing. And it's not eye shine. As Matt describes it, it's like this thing has its own internal power source. All the boys are mesmerized by that glow. They're only like 20-25 feet away from it, and the eyes are so big and the glow is so bright that they can see the black pupils separate from the glowing amber around it, and they can see intelligence. And they all just stand there, feet frozen in place as the monster eyes them, each one of them one at a time down the line. When it gets to Matt, he feels like that stare pierces right to his very core. And before he can wrangle his thoughts back to coherence, the beast stands up on two legs. And in that instant, Matt realizes monsters do exist. This thing is so big that it just can't be real. It has to be fake, right? Or this has to be a dream that he's going to wake up from. And curled up in his cozy bed, he's going to feel really silly for being so scared of a stupid dream, right? Right? But he's not waking up. He watches this thing stand up on two legs and rise to twice the height it was before. And he's still not waking up. He notices that overall it's shaped like a man, but it has dog-shaped legs with almost comically long arms that go down almost to its ankles. But it doesn't have paws at the end of its arms. It has hands like long, grotesque raccoon hands that end in sharp claws. Its fur is maybe an inch long all over, even on its tail, and actually looks like it's never spent a night outside in its life. And it's jet black. It's so black that it's blacker than the black of night behind it. But the moonlight and firelight combination is throwing enough light that it glints off the black fur just enough to see the contours of its muscles. And it is ripped. Enormous quads, huge biceps, a broad chest that Matt estimates at about 4 to 5 feet across. They can see every defined muscle on its body. If he wasn't so terrified, Matt would say this thing was beautiful. But he is drawn back to those shining eyes. That is, until it growls again. They can all hear the menacing, low-pitched rumble coming from the monster and can feel it as well. It's like your insides are vibrating and your entire body is unstable. Why not? Lions and tigers use infrasound to stun their prey. Why wouldn't this thing do the same thing? Matt feels the infrasound waves pass through his entire chest, and his knees begin to buckle under him, and he bends over a bit to catch his balance. And he's still not waking up. He looks over at his friends to see two of them completely bent over, one looking like he's gonna throw up, and one actually dry heaving. Matt feels like he's gonna pass out himself and thinks, what the hell is going on? Long before he can even begin to try to make sense of what is happening, the monster starts moving toward them. In the stunning distance it covers in just 2 strides, snaps all of the boys back to attention. Terry turns around and runs back into the building with the other 3 right on his heels. None of them are running very fast. Whatever that growl did to them is still wearing off, so they're kind of moving at a fast wobble to try to get somewhere else. And the first thing they see is the stairs. Too panicked to have any rational thinking skills working, they take the stairs to the 3rd floor, where they are now basically stuck. And Matt is still not waking up from this nightmare. There is a fire escape outside of the 3rd floor, but the section under the 3rd floor has long since rusted and fallen away, so the only direction is up to the roof. On the 4th floor, there's also access to the roof, but none of the floors have any alternate route out of the building. If they want out, they have to go back down to the 1st floor where that thing is. Terry starts losing his mind and starts crying and screaming, which, if the wolf thing doesn't already know where they are, certainly isn't going to help keep it that way. Alarm bells go off in Matt's head, who, running on pure adrenaline, grabs Terry so hard it lifts him off the floor. And he puts his hand over Terry's mouth, desperate to stop the noise. And even though his cries for help are now severely muffled, Terry keeps screaming through Matt's hand. Everyone else is shouting in the loudest whispers they dare, telling Terry, "You gotta shut up, man. Be quiet. It's gonna find us." Finally, Terry runs short on air and shoots Matt a pleading stare. Matt tells him, "If you promise to shut up, I'll let you go." And Terry nods. Matt loosens his grip, setting Terry's feet back on the floor. Terry bends over, gulping in the fresh air. But before any of them can start to mentally collect themselves, they all hear a thump, feel the building shake a little, and hear the telltale scraping noise from claws on concrete. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis is in the building. The boys move to the concrete half wall that looks out down onto the 1st floor and see this thing moving in past the shield wall. They watch its head appear in the firelight, followed by shoulders that ripple the surrounding muscles as it walks, and the rest of the jet black, impossibly long body, until finally the tail signals the end of this living mammoth. The firelight casts this massive shadow on the wall that just keeps growing and growing until the entire wall behind it is dark. They see it scanning the room and sniffing the air, obviously looking for them. They stand frozen in place, praying to God that the relatively windy night air coming through the building might either hide their scent or send it off in a different direction. As they are all transfixed on the beast, willing themselves into living statues, they hear a new sound, almost like a light crackling noise. Matt sees what looks to be a trail of water drops following the creature. Putting the drops together with the crackling noises, realizes this thing is salivating to the point that it's drooling onto the concrete, making the pitter-patter noises like a sprinkler on a driveway. That tells Matt one thing: this thing is looking for dinner. As it slowly moves around the 1st floor and around the fire, the boys notice 2 things. First, the pure jet blackness of this whole creature is actually broken up by a faint white stripe going from its shoulders to its tail. And second, its huge white teeth with canines so long that they hang out of its mouth even when it's closed. And its eyes are still burning at top intensity. That internal amber shine that is so bright, Matt can see an orangish glow being cast wherever it looks. Now, the idea that this monster is a natural being is heart attack inducing enough, but what Matt sees next convinces him they are dealing with something way beyond this world. He watches it walk around the fire, and as it gets close, one of its hands or paws or whatever you want to call it kind of blinks out. Like, just for a couple of seconds, it's cloaked like Predator. But that's not all. While it's cloaked out, Matt and Pete can see. The other two don't see it because of their angle, but Matt and Pete both can see almost like an energy signature, like the plasma ropes you see in videos from the surface of the sun. Then everything goes back to normal, if you can call it that. The creature still has its nose in the air, trying to pinpoint the location of the boys. The wind must take a bad turn for the boys, because the next thing they see is the creature's head snap around and eyes staring directly at them. The jig is up. It knows where they are, and it bares its teeth and growls that deep, throaty growl again. And Matt feels the vibration from it, just like he did before, but sounds don't travel well through concrete. So the concrete half wall that they're standing in front of must have blocked at least some of the sound waves, because this time they don't feel weak and sick like they did before. The beast stands back up on two legs near one of the giant concrete pillars, allowing the boys to get a sense of its true height. Their estimate? 10 to 12 feet tall. It stands there in an almost comic book buff bodybuilder pose, which would be comical if they weren't also terrified. And it also lends credence to Matt's theory that it has to be fake. But it's not. It's standing right there in front of all four of them. Whatever it is the alpha predator of alpha predators. It scans the room, first to its left and then to its right. Bingo, a staircase. It looks back at the boys, and Matt's stomach drops, because he and this thing both know what it's going to do next. It drops back down to all fours and heads for the stairway. And even though this stairway is missing like 4 stairs, so the boys would have to jump up and kind of climb their way past the missing stairs, this thing jumps the void like it's not even there. Matt watches in simultaneous horror and fascination at how fluid and graceful its movements are, and how it looks like it uses its tail as kind of a rudder to help it balance and steer as it makes its way from the first floor to the second. As the space between them and the monster gets smaller, a whole new wave of panic erupts from the boys. Terry starts screaming and just running in circles until he finally makes a break for the stairs that take you to the 4th floor. Doug runs for the fire escape that will take him to the roof. That leaves just Matt and Pete standing there in utter paralysis, not having any idea what to do, as the creature continues moving from the 2nd floor to the 3rd. Matt knows that when it finally does make it to the 3rd, the first thing in its path is him. This is the point where Matt begins to understand that he's going to die. He's only 14. He doesn't have an entire lifetime of memories to flash in front of his eyes, but he thinks about his mom and his dad and his 4 brothers and sisters. He thinks about his dog that he adores. He thinks about how he was all set to go to high school and play football at the same private school his dad had played at. But none of that is ever going to happen now. It's all gone. Instead, they're all going to be mauled and eaten by this monster. Matt just hopes he's not the last one who has to watch all the others die first. The creature gets to the top of the stairs where Matt and Pete are just standing there, not knowing where else to go. It's standing there 6 or 7 feet from Matt, close enough that a half a pounce from this thing would land it right on top of Matt. But that doesn't happen. In an event that Matt can only describe as divine intervention, just as he can see the monster's muscles tightening in readiness to pounce, a train goes by. And not only that, but it blows its horn, something that never happens. Trains going through this area never blow their horns unless it's an emergency. They never had before, and they never have since, but one did that day. Matt will never know if it blew the horn because it saw the fire and thought the building was on fire, or maybe someone saw something unbelievable happening on that 3rd floor. Whatever the reason, that horn was enough commotion to change the beast's focus from the boys to the train. The boys start screaming at the train, "Help us! Somebody help!" Matt can see an indecision wash over its face as it looked back and forth between them and that train. Dinner or safety? The indecision is replaced with a flash of anger as the monster's muscles seem to twitch one last time in Matt and Pete's direction, like a bully pulling out that last major flinch move. Like one last burst of terror from the boys is the minimum payment it will accept for having to give up an easy meal. With that, it turns and heads back down the stairs. It shoots down to the 1st floor impossibly fast, then starts heading for the door. But just before it leaves the firelight for the darkness, Matt sees its movements freeze. It's not the beast that freezes. It keeps going. It doesn't stop. But the animal form, the monster form that they see stops as it transitions into a sort of formless shadow and continues on out into the darkness. Matt and Pete turn their attention back to the train, still yelling for someone to help them. I mean, whatever this thing is, it's still out there. And they swear they hear the train slowing. And maybe it did, but it didn't stop. It just continues down the track until the boys can no longer see or hear it, taking their hopes of rescue with it. What little glimmer of hope they had is crushed as the fear comes roaring back. Now, the train is gone. Is it going to come back and kill them? Terry and Doug come back down to the 3rd floor, thinking that Matt and Pete's cries for help meant that they're all going to be saved. They all look at one another, and all can see the toll this encounter has taken on all of them. Pale faces, shaking. All they want to do is curl up into 4 little balls and lay there for a while. But they can't. They cannot take the chance that this thing's going to come back for them again. However, that means to get home, they have to embark on a minimum half-hour trek to get to the closest point of safety. And none of them has the guts to try that, knowing that this thing could be waiting for them to leave the building before it comes back for dinner. So they stay there for the next hour, every minute of which is spent thanking God for keeping the monster away, trying to mentally psych themselves up and gird their loins for the gauntlet they are going to have to take, and trying to calm Terry, who has completely lost it. He's crying and screaming, "I just want to go home. I just want my mom and dad. We can't go out there. It's going to be waiting for us." And who can blame him? He's not saying anything that they're not all thinking. All 4 of them keep glancing back at that doorway, that space between the Spartan shields, waiting to see the glowing amber eyes staring back at them. But they never appear. Finally, they summon the courage, or at least enough will to survive, to move down to the 2nd floor. Terry still losing his mind, so they just drag him along with them. They wait there for another half an hour. Same drill as before, watching for glowing eyes, psyching themselves up before they get the courage to go down to the first floor. Once there, they realize they can't really wait any longer. They're already out later than they should be. And even if they're not being stalked by a monster, this is not the place for kids to be this late at night. They have to make a run for it now. Terry, still off the deep end, and is begging the others not to make him go out there. Finally, Matt snaps, grabs Terry again, and says, "Listen, we are leaving. You are coming with us. If you don't, that thing is going to come back here and kill you, and you are going to die here alone. So you either come with us now or you stay." But Terry just keeps screaming, "Don't leave me!" So finally, Matt and Pete just grab Terry by the arms and pull him from the building out onto that concrete apron where they first saw this thing and where they last saw this thing. The next move is to jump down and start running. Easier said than done. This outcropping is off the ground by a few feet, so it would be really easy for anything to hide underneath and just wait for them to come out before attacking them. So with the biggest leap of faith that any of them will ever have to make in their lives, they jump down and start running. And they are running as fast as they can while still staying together as a group. Terry is holding onto Matt and Pete's shirts from behind, too afraid of being left behind to let go, and choking them both in the process. But as they get further and further away from that building, Terry relaxes and starts running on his own. So all four boys are just hoofing it as fast as they can in a solid group, with every one of their senses on high alert, waiting for the monster to come after them. Every kicked rock, every leaf blown into their path sends their panic back to DEFCON 1. After the longest half hour of their lives, with maybe the exception of the time that they were still in the building, they finally make it to the last big hurdle before they're practically home free. The gravel hill. To get out of this area and back to civilization, they need to climb this hill of loose gravel that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 feet tall. Going down is easy. You just have to turn to the side and slowly walk down. But going up is a different story. You have to go up on all fours, and even if you take it slow and steady, there's at least a 50-50 shot that the gravel is going to give way under your feet and send you sliding back down. Usually, they would laugh at each other as they all struggled up the hill together, making fun of the first person who starts to slide, knowing that it's most likely going to happen to all of them at least once. But nobody is laughing right now. Not to mention the fact that getting to the top on a good day is exhausting. Right now, they got nothing in the tank but an overdose of adrenaline. That hill may as well be the cliffs of insanity! But there's no way around it. So, they all just start up the hill. And like always, they all take turns sliding back down. Except this time, every slip backwards comes with a heart-stopping certainty that there is a monster waiting at the bottom to kill them. "Is it behind me?" is the call that comes out of each one of them at least once as they all struggle not to take 2 steps back for every 1 step forward. Finally, Matt and Pete manage to get to the top and pull the other 2 up as well. They all run across the highway, hop the fence on the other side, cross the street, and collapse on Doug's front porch. Now, this is the point where I wish I could say they all live happily ever after, but they don't. Terry doesn't talk for 2 weeks, and when they all, as a group, tell each of their parents, their reactions on the scale from "I believe you" to "You're nuts, quit lying," run the entire spectrum. Matt, growing up Catholic, decides to go see a priest at his church. He tells the priest the entire story, fully expecting the priest to chastise him for concocting such an obscene story. Much to his surprise, the priest believes every word. He tells Matt, God saved your life, Matthew, and you need to understand that sometimes these things bleed into our world, and sometimes they take us. I don't even know what to say after that. I'm terrified just listening to him tell his story. I can't even imagine what he went through. But if you would like to hear the entire story directly from Matt himself, head straight over to Matt's new channel, Planet 412, where his very first video is his own recounting of the whole horrific experience. And then stay for all the other insane encounters he covers. Not a big surprise that an experience like this would send him down the cryptid rabbit hole with his own channel. I've left a link for you in the description below. If you have a far stronger constitution than I do for breath-stopping, nerve-wracking encounters and would like to experience another insane, epic Dogman encounter, click this video right here. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.